or will it only further widen divides? That's going to be a big talking point on the news today. Also, why is it that petrol and diesel is running short in several parts of the country? We'll have ground reports on that too. All that and much more on the news today.
Presented by Berger Easy Clean. No dag, no dhabba, only beautiful walls. Presented by Aditya Birla Group, Big in Your Life. Co-presented by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist. Co-presented by JK Tyre Ranger Series, stay wild at heart.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today. This is your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points. The big talking point tonight. The Agnipath ambitious army recruitment scheme is facing an Agnipareeksha as protests break out in several parts of the country. We'll have much more on that. It's our special focus tonight. We'll have lots of newsmakers, including the Congress MP Manish Tewari, among others. Also, Rahul Bachao Drive will be joined by Renuka Chaudhary, who finds herself in the midst of a controversy after being seen holding the collar of a policeman during protests. All that and much more on the news today. But first, the 9 headlines at 9 tonight. Fire, fury, backlash over the centre's ambitious Agnipath recruitment scheme for the army. Angry protests erupt in Bihar, where trains are burnt. Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan and Haryana also see protests. Enforcement Directorate National Herald heat remains on Rahul Gandhi. Agency sources claim to India Today that the Congress MP has denied all charges, puts the onus on late Congress Treasurer Motilal Vora for signing all Herald deals. The Congress continues to hit the street against Rahul Gandhi ED questioning. Violent street fights across the city. Congress leader Renuka Chaudhary booked for manhandling a policeman in Hyderabad. Supreme Court refuses to put the brakes on bulldozers in Uttar Pradesh but warns against any untoward incident or discrimination. Asks the Yogi government to file a response on the Jamiyat plea alleging illegal demolitions within 3 days. Kerala gold scandal accused drops another bombshell against Pinarayi Vijayan, claims the Kerala Chief Minister lobbied for his daughter with Sharjah's ruler to set up an IT firm. And India Today impact, the National Commission for Women now summons Maharashtra DGP over the arrest of Marathi actor Ketli Chitle, who's been in jail for over 30 days for a social media post against NCP Chief Sharad Pawar. Bears take charge of Dalal Street. Sensex and Nifty hit their lowest level in 13 months. All sectors in the red. Metals worst hit. Rupees closed at fresh record low for a second day. US Federal Reserve acts against runaway inflation, hikes rates by 75 basis points, the highest rate hike in 28 years. And Rakesh Jhunjhunwala-owned Akasa Air receives the delivery of its first 737 aircraft. The airline hopes to take off the runway after COVID impact is minimized. But tonight's top story, anger is rising among Youth over Agnipath, the ambitious Narendra Modi government army recruitment scheme. Military job aspirants hit the streets across north and central India today against the decision that reduces their service term to 4 years for 75% of the new recruits. Political fire has also begun over Agnipath, with Congress MP Rahul Gandhi accusing the centre of putting India's youth through an Agnipareeksha. Opposition is mounting over the Agnipath scheme. The government is rejecting the charges leveled, but on the streets, the anger is palpable. It's our top story tonight.
Massive fire and fury over Forces' new Agniveer scheme. Protesters launching pan-India violence stir. From multiple spots in Bihar to Haryana's Palwal and parts of Rajasthan, UP and Madhya Pradesh. Setting multiple trains on fire. Vandalizing police stations. Setting police vehicles on fire. And attacking policemen, leaving them bleeding with grievous injuries. Army aspirants going on massive rampage. Amid the arson, clashes and fierce street fights, politics too raged. Opposition jumped in to target the Modi government. Rahul Gandhi questioned the short-term employment scheme, claiming no rank or pension for armed forces. Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav called the scheme negligent and fatal for India's future. Aam Aadmi Party chief and Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal said youth should not get just 4 years to serve the forces.
The Agnipath scheme is controversial, carries multiple risks, subverts the long-standing traditions and ethos of the armed forces, and there is no guarantee that the soldiers recruited under the scheme will be better trained and motivated to defend the country.
मैं आग्रह करूंगा केंद्र सरकार से कि इस अग्निपथ योजना को वापस लें, क्योंकि सेना के साथ खिलवाड़ नहीं होना चाहिए और नौजवानों के भविष्य के साथ खिलवाड़ नहीं होना चाहिए। कोई कारगर योजना लेकर आए जो स्थायी रूप से लोगों को रोजगार मिले।
The government came out with a clarification, saying the new employment scheme will ensure secured future of service personnel through financial packages, bank loans, higher studies and priority entry into police and paramilitary forces.
मैं हरियाणा सरकार की ओर से ये विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि जो 75% ऐसे वीर सैनिक अगर वापस आने के पर सरकारी नौकरी चाहते होंगे तो उनको वरीयता दी जाएगी, या अन्य काम करने के लिए भी उनके लिए वरीयता की योजनाएं बनाई जाएंगी।
Can the government clarification pacify armed forces aspirants angry and apprehensive over what they see as a raw deal? With Rohit Singh in Ara and Devankur Vadhavan in Jaipur, Bureau Report, India Today.
So is Agnipath an urgent reform, or has it been a hasty revamp? Is the real reason cutting the mounting pension bill of the armed forces, or is it designed to truly modernize the forces? And will these big bang reforms, as they are being called, really pay off in the end? Those are some of the questions that we will raise tonight. I'm joined, my first guest is Manish Tewari, Congress MP and member of Parliamentary Group on Defence, the Consultative Committee of Parliament on Defence. Manish Tewari, appreciate your joining us. Since the government has announced the Agnipath scheme, we've seen massive protests already in the last 48 hours in Central and North India. Army aspirants worried about their future. Do you also appreciate the fear and anxiety of the aspirants as an opposition leader and someone who tracks national security?
Rajdeep, I absolutely empathize with the fears, apprehensions and anxieties of the young people who are protesting. However, having said that, we need to understand that the nature of warfare has completely transformed itself over the past decade or decade and a half. And the armed forces are not an employment guarantee program. Going back almost 3 decades now, most armed forces have transitioned to a very light footprint on the ground while being very heavy on technology and weaponry. So therefore, under those circumstances, if India requires a younger profile for its armed forces, if it requires that ultimately its pension bill also comes within manageable limits, you need to transition to a new paradigm. So therefore, this is a scheme which the government has announced. It should be allowed to play itself out. And if at all there are any glitches, those glitches can be ironed out. I think what the government needs to give clarity on is the transitioning process post 4.5 years. Because I can understand somebody coming out at the age of 21 or 22, he or she would obviously be apprehensive about their future. So a transitioning process which takes you out of the armed forces and into some form of regular employment, whether in the paramilitary forces or the state police forces, is something which the government must build into the scheme. And I think that to a large extent will be able to allay the apprehensions of people.
It's very interesting, Manish Tewari, because you seem to be welcoming the scheme on a day when your party and many other opposition leaders are very critical of it. Rahul Gandhi has spoken out against it strongly on Twitter, has said that with threats on two fronts, schemes like this will reduce the operational readiness of the army. He's saying it is playing with the future of the youth of the country, and says BJP should stop playing with the dignity and traditions of the forces. So you clearly are actually again at odds with your party leadership on the issue of Agnipath.
Well, Rajdeep, without making any value judgment on something which somebody else may have said, I have written extensively with regard to civil-military relations in my book, which was released in the December of 2021. And let me point out as to how the current nature of the Indian armed forces came into existence. You see, before 1857, the British essentially had three armies: the Madras Army, the Calcutta Army, and the Bombay Army. And the recruitment into these armed forces were from and amongst high-class or upper-caste Hindus. It is during the First War of Independence in 1857 when the sepoys of the Bengal Army, who were in the vanguard of this revolt/struggle for independence, that the British actually coined the martial race theory. There was a Jonathan Peel Commission in 1859, and then they identified 15 castes from which they thought, or who had been friendly to the British during the First War of Independence, and they would start recruiting from these particular castes. And most of them were located in North India. So between 1870 and 1945, till the end of the Second World War, there was very heavy recruitment from Delhi all the way up to the Khyber Pass, which in Pakistan is, of course, called the Punjabiization of the army. But that is essentially how these martial caste regiments came into existence. Way back in 1966, we tried to correct this anomaly by bringing in something called the recruitment male population policy, whereby recruitment into the armed forces would be a percentage of the population of that particular state or union territory into the population of India. So therefore, under those circumstances, to continue with a paradigm which was put in place by the British imperialists for entirely ulterior reasons in the 21st century, I really do not see any rationale to it.
You're giving us an excellent exposition on the history of the evolution of the Indian Army. But clearly, as I said, your party leadership feels differently. Many others feel differently because they're looking at politics and society at the moment. In 21st century India, Manish Tewari, there are a number of people, lakhs of unemployed youngsters who see the army as their only hope and future. They are now worried what will happen to them after this 4-year tour of duty. To use now Priyanka Gandhi Vadra's words, again your party leader, you can't use the army as a laboratory for your experiments.
Well, in my calculus, Rajdeep, with great respect to people who may hold opposing views, national security and politics fall into two different buckets. And in my estimation, as we look to the remaining decades of the 21st century, India requires an extremely mobile army or a mobile armed force. It requires what is called an expeditionary force, a force which is younger in age profile, which is far, far more proficient insofar as technology and weaponry is concerned. So therefore, there has to be a paradigm shift in the entire structure of our armed forces. And as I earlier respectfully pointed out, the armed forces are there for protecting the sovereignty and integrity of the nation. They are not an employment guarantee program.
No, you're saying something very strong, that the armed forces are not here as an employment guarantee scheme, Mr. Tewari. They're here to protect the nation. But, the fact is this a message which political parties can easily take to the people of the country? People want employment. They see army as an employment opportunity.
Well, ultimately, that's the entire raison d'etre of an armed force. Why do you raise an armed force of the Union? Look at what is the constitutional role enjoined upon an armed force. It is to protect the unity and integrity of the country. And therefore, under those circumstances, as I said, that the entire nature of warfare has completely changed. We are in what is called the informationized warfare age. And as I was earlier pointing out, that we are heading to a situation whereby you could also be in a specter of contactless warfare, where increasing reliance on artificial intelligence, drone technologies, robotics, etc., is going to define the entire nature and future of warfare. Is there any pragmatism in continuing with very an army or an armed force which has a very heavy human footprint? In fact, if you go back to the debates in the US during the 80s and the 90s, these debates, especially with regard to higher defense reform, focused upon completely reforming their armed forces. And in fact, one of the biggest votaries of a mobile and light footprint armed force was Donald Rumsfeld, not everybody's favorite person. But the fact is that some of the seminal reforms in the way the US armed forces are structured were introduced by him. And this is a pattern which has been followed by almost every other armed force in the world.
So very interesting. Manish Tewari, Congress leader, is now coming out in a way in support of the government scheme at a time when it would appear many others in his party are opposing it. Interesting viewpoint there from Manish Tewari, saying the army cannot be an employment guarantee scheme in the country. Well, you've heard from the politician. Let's now turn to the army veterans. I spoke to them a short while ago. Listen in. Okay, we've heard from the politicians, but now we need to hear from the real stakeholders, those who've been part of the armed forces, served with distinction. Joining me now is Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, former DGMO, Director General Military Operations, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former Chief of Staff of 14 Corps and DG Infantry, Indian Army, and also with us is former Air Chief Marshal Rakesh Bhadoria, recently retired, and remember, he was part of this process of the Agnipath decision making. Thank you all very much for joining us. I had recorded earlier with Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria, and I began by asking him, sir, for many veterans, this is now an emotional issue. They have a problem with the structure. They are saying, how do you, with 6 months training, 4 months annual leave, 3.5 years, is that enough to get in people with the rigor and discipline needed to make soldiers? You can't make soldiers in 3 years and then just allow them to go out.
We are all used to a certain pattern of recruitment and training and build up with the decades of this process having gone through. Whenever there is a large change, these concerns will come up. Okay, whenever, and it's a hugely transformative, very big change. You see the world over. You tell me if it can happen in advanced, defense services of the world, why can't it happen here? And let me tell you, this period of 4 years is longer than some of the places where this, and I'm not talking of conscripts, please don't get it wrong. I'm talking of initial contract period of the soldiers who get contracted in various parts of the world. Okay, so, and our time is in fact longer than that. Do we really think that some of those advanced armies, they don't work well? It is not so. Yes. When in-depth training is concerned, when middle-level leadership is concerned, those aspects will not get covered in these 4 years. There will be tasks and combat employment of these Agniveers for the 4-year period up to a certain level, and the people who get into permanent cadre will be taken up for more detail, be it technical, be it any of the arms, into middle-level leadership, and they will form the core and the backbone. And in any employment, there will be a combination of the permanent or the more experienced and the Agniveers. They will form a part. It will be a natural process of training and development of these Agniveers so that they become combat effective. There is no doubt that their effectiveness will be ensured by the 3 services. We should not have any doubt whatsoever.
You know, you're saying that this has been successfully done in other parts of the world, Air Chief Marshal, but India is a little different, because look at the social complexity which we are now seeing today on the streets. People have hit the streets, youth in among the poorer parts of the country, in Bihar, in Haryana, parts of the country where they are saying that they are worried, the youth are worried that if 75% of the recruits have to leave the force after 4 years, how will they see it as a career option? They will be unemployed, many of them at the age of 21. That explains some of the unrest being seen. How do you account for that?
To the youngsters, I want to clearly elaborate that you must yourself look at the terms and conditions. The starting terms and conditions are better than the existing one today. The only difference is that it is not permanent upfront. If you are, you have the capability and you have the commitment to remain in the defense service and serve the nation, it will show during these 4 years. And if you are really up to it and working towards it, you will get into the permanent cadre. In addition, you have an option at the end of 4 years that you will have starting, 12 lakhs kitty with you. With that, you can either start any of the job in the field of your liking, or go into any of the other departments, be it CAPF, be it Assam Rifles, be it state governments, where already actions are being taken to give preference to Agniveers. So it is to be understood in its totality.
Okay, we've heard from Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria, who was part of this process. Let's turn to you, General Bhatia, because I've read already, are very critical of it. You seem to suggest it could affect the army's izzat, a sense of camaraderie, and more importantly, that it could lead to what we are already seeing on the streets, an element of unrest among those who now face an uncertain future. Even if they join the army, they have to leave, some of them, or many of them, after 4 years.
Rajdeep, the issues are, 2 major issues are there. One is the combat effectiveness, that is the defense preparedness, operational readiness. This is the major issue because the armed forces got a primary role. And I'm talking the Indian context. I'm not talking of other nations. The other nations have a different security challenges. Our security challenges range from stone pelting in Kashmir to the nuclear domain, LIC to the nuclear domain. We have contested borders. We have China, the PLA knocking at our doors. So we have a different context altogether. We have an excellent recruitment base. Now, what has happened is, in the Agnipath scheme, the recruitment base remains the same. The recruit selection process remains the same. The procedures remain the same. The criteria remains the same. But what has changed? The terms of service. And the terms of service is now different. He'll come for 4 years. Now, why is he, if you go into the rural areas or even into semi-urban areas, the aspirants try for 2 to 3 years to get recruited. They're running day in and day out. They're getting to a physical fitness. They have a just path. They have an aim. And they want to make Army, Air Force, Navy as a profession, as a passion. Now, when he comes for 4 years, he's apprehensive what will happen to him. Why should he come to the army? He'll go to the CFPF, he'll go to the government's job, he'll go to state police, state armed police. So we'll lose that recruitment based on getting the best. That is number two.
No, but what
aspirations of the youth will not be-
but while you are saying this, you will have to also offer a better scheme. If you say 4 years is far too limited a period, 4 years will not generate the kind of passion that you need to be part of an army, to be part of a regiment. What is the option? Given the fact that the pension amounts are ballooning, pension expenses are ballooning, you need a younger, fitter, technologically savvy army. Is the argument being made?
See, these are beliefs which are not founded on logic. When you talk of pension budget ballooning, it's not ballooning. You look at the figures. The figures speak for themselves. There is a pension budget is high, definitely, but 35% pension budget is of the civilian employees in the Ministry of Defence, paid for the defence budget. No, they are on the NPS scheme, so pension budget is not ballooning. That is number one. Pensions are high, but then you got to look after soldiers. It's a contract for life. It's a way of life, like I said. The third thing which you are trying to say is that when he comes in 4 years, he is not going to become a very effective member of any team. We are an army which is different. We are sailors, air force are different. We come in for our whole life, especially in the army. It is regimental. It is Naam Namak Nishan. It is my buddy.
But you've always had short service commissions in the past also. General Bhatia, you've had short service commissions in the past.
So that is officers. That is different. And the officers also, they came for short service. They had an aim to stay on. 90% wanted to stay on, and about 80% stayed on. So we're talking officers at a different level. These are men. For every recruit who comes in, we have hundreds of them as volunteers who come or candidates. Now we're cutting at the very base. In the end, why are we disturbing an established system? That's the key question. We have a combat effective armed forces. We have a proven armed forces. Let me now repeat it again. At today's 2 years of Galwan, why did Kal Santosh Babu and his men make the supreme sacrifice? Why did they raise the cost for the PLA? The PLA were contractual soldiers, conscripts. They were not willing to fight it out. We raised the cost of the PLA so that today, for the last 2 years, we've not seen any violent escalation along the LAC. So look at that. Look at the effectiveness. Look at the results. Let's not look at the inputs, the budgets, the outcomes.
You're saying that discipline and professionalism will suffer if 75% of the force every 4 years leaves. Am I correct? That's your primary concern.
Definitely, because a soldier takes about 5 to 6 years to become part of a team.
Okay.
It is not just that he comes in and you tell him, okay, this is the duty. He has to understand everything. He has to be it's a well-oiled machine.
Okay,
the intangibles are there. So what I'm talking about is, when you talk of training, also 6 months of training, knowledge and skill are the easiest to impart. It is the attitude that takes time.
Let me take what you're saying to General Kulkarni, who's listening to it very, very attentively. General Kulkarni, do you believe, as General Bhatia is saying, that this could affect the professionalism of the force, the sense of camaraderie, the way of life that the army becomes for many Jawans who enter it? 4 years, 75% leave. Will we need to relook at that, both the percentage of people who leave and maybe offer them alternative options at 21?
Rajdeep, thank you very much for inviting me, firstly. Secondly, let me be honest. The Agniveer is a stand-alone HR policy. All recruitment to the 3 services is going to be through this Agnipath scheme. There is no denying the fact. As regards the camaraderie and the aspect of the battalion regimentation, Naam, Namak, Nisan, Izzat, all of it, to those sepoys who will be there, 25% be absorbed. What matters is today is the 75% that are going to be leaving this unabsorbed. What of them? That is the concern. Let me be honest with you. Numerous kind of assurances have been given by the government, be it from the Home Minister, be it from the various chief ministers and things of those kind. I would recommend that they be put down and absolutely black and white, which I'm sure the government would do with the passage of time. We're seeing what it is, because there are apprehensions. Those apprehensions are for those 75% of the people who will not be absorbed. Would they be on the street? Would their commitments be lacking? Would they not be able to fight with the same
you're saying,
General Kulkarni, I think if we ensure that the ones who are even going out are actually the real ambassadors, the real acid test of the Agnipath scheme by giving, say, about 15% reservations in the Central Armed Police Forces, another 15% reservations being given to them in the Class C and D Force, another 15% reservations being given to them in the State Police Forces, another 10% reservations in the railways and the banks. I think once they are not assurances, reservations.
General Kulkarni, I had Manish Tewari, just a minute, sir. I had Manish Tewari on the program earlier who said that the armed forces are not an employment guarantee program, that you can't guarantee people employment. In a professional setup, you need to put national security above all else. This is not, just another service where people will just come as an employment guarantee scheme. How do you respond to that?
Rajdeep, let's be very honest about it, definitely. But the kind of socio-economic conditions we want to enjoy the demographic, tech-savvy dividend of the nation. If we want the age from 32 to come down to 26, if we want, in any case, whether it is an Agniveer or a Sepoy subsequently, for the initial 4 years is there. There's no question. Supposing, let's say, for instance, as an example, that the boy who was not likely to become a Sepoy in the army after 4 years of service, you mean to say his commitment would die down? Definitely not, when he knows the bits and pieces of the entire thing, that yes, even if he's not part of the army, subsequently, he would be part of somewhere else.
So you're saying some kind of assurance, that's a good point.
That probably feel that this continuity, but why not look at it from the army's point of view or the armed forces point of view? Why should we accept all of them, even if they are not capable? If we have accepted the recruitment procedure is the same, there is no dilution. There is no dilution in the combat effectiveness is concerned. There, in fact, more opportunities been given to the people to join the services, leave the service. Who today in India, at the age of 24 or 25, would be walking out with 12 lakh package and the kind of salaries and the kind of life and the kind of entire change in his.
Can I just stop you? Can I just stop you for a moment, because both of you have made very important points. Let's just listen into what Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria had to say on what you're hearing. Air Chief Marshal, I asked him, some veterans have said now the period should be increased to 7-8 years. 50% should be retained. There should be reservations in paramilitary if necessary for those who leave the services. Is that something that should be looked at, some element of flexibility in this?
Okay, this number of 7 years, 50%, 40%, all this was discussed when this was debated. There are some advantages of 7 years, but the disadvantage at the end of 7 years was very high. And that is to do with, change of job. With 4 years, the advantage is that when Agniveer goes out, he is in the bracket of 22, 23, maybe at 24 years. So age is on his side to start a new career, be it in any of the other service or be it his own business or his own work. So age is on his side. 7 years, it puts on the other side. It is a little late to get into other services, and this issue of not having permanent, if 4 years is causing concerns, 7 years would have caused even deeper concerns in the youngsters. So the 4 year was decided as the optimum period wherein they can be effectively combat employed in the defense services. The services don't lose out. And the Agniveer doesn't lose out. The age is on his side when he goes. He has, nearly 12 lakh with him to start a new life, new career, new this thing. And it is a jumping board for him. I don't see any concern. And when this scheme really puts into motion, you will see 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, that time they will realize the importance of this option at the end of 4 years.
General Bhatia, therefore, in conclusion, do you believe that the government should just scrap this scheme, or do you believe the government should be flexible about it? As Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria seems to suggest, they believe 4 years is an ideal period. Many others may have differing views, but is it possible to be flexible and maybe move in this direction, because you need a younger, leaner army in the age which we live in? You don't need large standing armies.
Rajdeep, I think the scheme is announced, it's dusted, so there's no going back on it. What I feel is the government should take the ownership of the scheme. It should have the accountability of the success of the scheme. And the armed forces should be given the authority to review it. So the first year of 46,000 which they come, treat it as a pilot project, see the pros and cons, see what are the strengths and weaknesses, see what the opportunities are there for the youth. Now it's very, very easy to say the youth will come in 4 years, 12 lakhs and go back. Are we looking at a mercenary army? No. Are we looking at this 4 years of people who are going to maintain aircraft, submarines, ships, weapons, radars, guns? They will not have it. We want to recruit the ITIs. ITIs do not train on all these equipment, please. Are we looking at people who come and do ticket punching so that they can join the CAPF and the Assam Rifles and the state police? I have my apprehensions, please. I don't like people who come for ticket punching for 4 years. Firstly, we're going to get the last of the lot who can't get through anywhere, come and join the army for 4 years. Right? We are the first choice, now we're the last choice. The armed forces, that is when I say we.
We were the first choice, now we will be the last choice. You heard the veterans there. Let's therefore now go to Gaurav Bhatia, BJP's spokesperson who joins us. Gaurav, Manish Tewari, interestingly, congressman, has come out in a way in support of it, but most opposition parties now strongly opposing it, and you've seen what's happened on the streets in the last 48 hours. Many will say reforms don't take place in a vacuum. Everybody wants the army to reform, but reforms don't take place in a vacuum. The people who are feeling adversely affected are angry and fearful, mainly the young. Teenagers are saying their hopes will go after 4 years if they have only 4-year terms. Did the Modi government, Gaurav Bhatia, once again go ahead with a scheme without factoring the potential adverse consequences?
Rajdeep, you're absolutely right that reforms are not made in a vacuum. And let me make this statement very responsibly that there is no knee-jerk reaction. It's a well-thought scheme. What are the advantages? Let me tell you first. First of all, every youth in the country aspires to serve in the armed forces, serve the country. Fulfillment of that dream. I think nothing is more honorable, even for a day, if you can serve the country well. Second, the pay package itself is very competitive. They would be trained in other skills also. So once the 4 years tenure comes to an end, they would have other employment opportunities also. And as you are aware, UP government, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Haryana have already announced that they would give priorities to these Agniveers.
But that seems to be an afterthought. 1 minute. You know, the problem, Gaurav Bhatia, all of this seems to be an afterthought. The fact is, people are fearful. This is a country, Gaurav, where people are facing a job emergency. Lakhs of people, for them, the army is a way of life, a badge of identity. Now, suddenly the government overnight says, we are changing the system, new system. You don't take people into confidence. That's the problem.
Okay. So, Rajdeep, a few important points I wish to make. First, is it that the new Agnipath scheme has been launched to the exclusion of other opportunities available in the armed forces, like the selection in the regular, forces? No. The answer is no. Second, Short Service Commission also gives a tenure of 10 years. So there also, whoever joins the Short Service Commission knows that the tenure length is 10 years. And to say that, 4 years of serving in the armed forces is not enough to evoke patriotism, I think is insulting the youth who are willing to serve the country well. Your second point, see, opposition should also not operate in a vacuum. Rajdeep, India, especially when Narendra Modi ji is the Prime Minister, the opposition has been opposing schemes like one rank, one pension implemented by Modi ji. They have opposed the GST, which has worked very well for us. CAA, the rules haven't come, but the opposition parties have opposed it. So, Rajdeep, we are open to a dialogue with the youth because they are our youth. But any youth resorting to violence, attacking uniformed police persons also is not a right given to anybody.
No, nobody is justifying the violence. The problem, Gaurav Bhatia, seems to be that when you bring in reforms, you have to have strong messaging with it. The messaging is missing. It cannot be overnight. Suddenly you declare that we are changing the way our recruitment is done. This is very different to short service commissions. These are 17-year-olds who at the age of 21, 75% of them could suddenly be told, look, Now you've got to find a life outside the army, and that's not easy for people to deal with. You need strong messaging. I come back to it. Government comes up with these reforms. We saw it with farm laws, but you're not able to send the right messaging to stakeholders, and that's going to create, as we've seen already, chaos and disruption.
Rajdeep, let me make it very clear to you that first of all, the messaging has been very effective also, because there are millions of youth who have welcomed this scheme because they feel it's an opportunity to serve the country, learn and hone their skills, and then also look for other employment opportunities. And more important than messaging, Rajdeep, you need to understand is execution, concrete execution. One rank, one pension, I was giving you an example. 30 years could not be implemented. Do you know 42,600 crore has been spent on one rank, one pension?
No, but that's the problem. No, Mr. Bhatia. Mr. Bhatia, that's the problem. You've gone with one. No, 1 minute. You've gone with one rank, one pension. Now, one of the arguments being made to bring in this scheme is that the pension budget has ballooned. You brought in one rank, one pension without thinking it through again, because at that moment it seemed a populist way of reaching out to army veterans. Today, some of those own veterans are telling us, you heard on the program, that the answer is not to then change the recruitment scheme. You want to reform the army or simply bring down your pension budget now?
Rajdeep, for you and some other detractors, especially in the opposition, army could be measured through the ballooning pension budget. But when one rank, one pension was implemented, the Prime Minister made an announcement, and it was a matter of pride for us to ensure that people who have sacrificed everything for the country, they deserve the best and they get the best. And I don't want to get into the economics of it, but you know how fiscal discipline is maintained. The defense budget is at its highest because of the revenue collections. The pension budget, let me give you a number, which was around 44,000 crore during the UP era, is 1,35,000 crore. But this policy is not because of the ballooning pension budget. It is because we want a leaner, younger force which will supplement the other warriors who are serving the country well.
It's interesting. It's interesting you're saying that. Let me be honest, Gaurav Bhatia, no one denies that we need a more efficient army. The question is, could this not have been done as a pilot project, as some are suggesting, General Bhatia was suggesting? Have a smaller pilot project, implement it effectively first, then you expand it. The problem is this big bang, this desire to have these big headlines. That is the problem. When reform comes in a country like India, you have to somewhere experiment with it and then implement it. Why go ahead with a big bang project without first knowing whether it can be executed and implemented on the ground?
Rajdeep, I think it is not your fault. You have a different perspective, which I respect.
It's not me, it's General Bhatia and the other veterans.
No, I respect General Bhatia. Not for the surname that we have in common, but because he served the country well. The point that I am making is, the government is in the best position to decide how to implement the new scheme. And you would also not deny, people thought that one rank, one pension cannot be implemented. It has been implemented. War memorial, super specialty hospitals for our Jawans, disability pension that has been increased, women fighter pilots. You know, these are the things that show that there is a firm resolve that Shri Narendra Modi ji has. And let me say this very responsibly. This policy is a game changer. The youths that want to serve the country, and there are millions of them who are celebrating that Agnipath has been launched, and they feel that 4 years that they will spend will make them a better individual, more, talented to take other jobs as well, as announced by the governments and also the central government.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, you're seemingly discounting all the anger we've seen on the street, saying a majority of people are welcoming this scheme. A final question. You also said that this scheme has been brought to make the army more tech savvy, more operationally effective. Now, in all these 8 years, I have never heard this government saying that they want to make that the army is not operationally effective. In fact, you've always said the opposite. So there are those who will say that if it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix it? Why are you creating institutional damage and potential institutional damage and sociological divisions in society by bringing in a scheme that can lead to chaos? What's wrong with the Indian Army? If it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix it?
Rajdeep, please understand, there are experts of the field, CDS, there are other senior ranking officers in the three armed forces who have all been consulted, and I'm sure you agree with me that they are better equipped to know what is in the interest of the country, what is in the interest of the armed forces. And as an example, let me tell you, 10 years, the Indian Air Force was asking for fighter planes. Rafales could not be inducted. The Bharatiya Janata Party government ensured that they are inducted.
Okay.
Apache, Chinook. What happened? It was because we had the willpower to implement on ground. There is no chaos. There might be some teething issues, but we are always open to a dialogue.
Okay.
But nobody needs to resort to violence because that is not the right way forward.
Okay, let me leave it there. You seem to believe that these are only minor incidents. You seem to believe that a majority of people have accepted and have, in a way, endorsed Agnipath.
And you believe they are major incidents?
No, look, Gaurav Bhatia, it is for you to decide. It's your government. We'll wait and see if there's a rollback, if there's a climb down. That often also tends to happen. We'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for joining me. Okay, let's move from there to our other big story. Remember, Congress workers staging the 4th day of their nationwide protests against Rahul Gandhi's continuing questioning by the Enforcement Directorate. In many places, the protest took a violent turn. Congress workers set a vehicle on fire in Hyderabad. They also protested outside the Raj Bhawan in Thiruvananthapuram. But the real action was seen in Hyderabad, where, remember, Renuka Chaudhary, and I will play that image at the moment, held a policeman by his collar while being taken away by other police personnel during the party's protest. That's the image that has caught today's imagination. She is pulling a police officer by the collar, the former union minister. She joins me now on the show. Renuka Chaudhary, you want to explain what you did? What you did is unacceptable. You are pulling a policeman by his collar.
What do you know, that I was pulling his collar or saving my life from falling down?
No, come on. Shall I show you the visual again?
Go back to it and show my left arm.
What are you doing?
Look at my left arm. Why are the police pushing and shoving me? I was going to fall down. Why are there men police around me?
No, you're pulling a policeman by the collar. That's unacceptable. You have every right to protest.
I was going to fall down, Rajdeep. I fell on that man. I almost fell over him, fell on him. Then you would have said I was hugging him. I tried to save my balance. I reached for his shoulder. He moved.
No, why not apologize? Why not just apologize tonight and say, look, I lost my cool in a very fractious situation. Just say that.
Listen, I have no hesitancy to apologize to the young man. He has no axe to grind to me, and I have no axe to grind to him. And I am a daughter of a uniform, so I know exactly what I'm doing. Now, I expect Telangana police to apologize to me as well. Let them come out and say that they have mishandled the whole situation. What was the provocation to have me arrested when I was just talking to the media? Why was my left arm twisted? Please see where my left arm is. Please see where my left arm is. See how it's being twisted by the police. They're the ones shoving and pushing me, and I almost fell onto that man. I hung on to him for dear life, because otherwise I would have fallen down and they would have stomped all over me.
No. Renuka Chaudhary, this protest by the Congress, it's entered its 4th day. There have been instances, and we covered them yesterday, where women MPs like Jyoti Mani were pushed around, where, 1 minute, B.V. Srinivas was kicked. I don't see any of that happening in Hyderabad. Here it seems you've taken the initiative to send a message to the police. Do you think that this is now getting out of control?
Telangana police are out of control. In case you don't know, if you care to do some investigative journalism, you will see how many cases are there. Ministers' relatives, MLAs' relatives, the chairman's relatives who have committed heinous crimes, where a man went to the police station in Khammam district against Puvada Ajay, the minister, committed suicide in the police station, drinking poison. Nothing has been done. Not even the SI has been suspended.
Ma'am,
You
it's
have
the optics. It's the optics. You have I come back to it. You have every right to protest, but the protest should be peaceful. The protest should not involve a situation like what seems to have happened. You're pulling him, ma'am. Where you're left, I'm seeing it again.
Yes,
Just
I'm
apologize and be done with it. You're a child of controversy.
I am falling. Why aren't you realizing that? Please see where my left arm is, Rajdeep. All of you tend to be so sanctimonious and pontify on all this without even knowing what's on the ground. Why are you only seeing this? Where is the video before this and after this? Show me that. Where the police were twisting my arm and they're shoving us around. I'm holding on to him for my dear life. But of course, I would have got more optics if I had cried and wrung my hands in despair and really howled about it. Not my style. Not my style.
Renuka Chaudhary, from coming in a tractor to Parliament to today being found with pulling the collar of a police officer, you always seem to catch the photo ops. But I do hope that at some stage you speak to that officer. He's a young man doing his duty, and apologize. I don't think it sends out the right image that a senior parliamentarian like you should pull the...
I wasn't given any exemption for being a senior parliamentarian.
Okay.
The police did not respect that.
Okay.
They manhandled us and me and the other three women. Their visuals, the entire Telugu media will give it to you. Ring them up and ask them.
Okay.
They will show you visuals where they were pushing and shoving all of us.
I will leave it there.
Don't pontify like this without knowing the facts. The facts are, it was a totally unprovoked situation. I was sitting and talking to the media. I was not in the whole,
right.
Whatever protest that was happening. I was not there. You can look at any visual. I got off my car and I said, what happened? Everyone's gone. They said, oh, they were arrested and taken away. I said, oh, really?
Okay.
And the media rushed towards me to talk to me. I was talking to the media. When unprovoked, these police come from behind, start pushing and shoving, pinch those women, tore their clothes,
ma'am,
tore our garments.
Okay.
And I'll send you a visual.
Please do send me the visuals of what happened before and after. We look forward to that. But for now, thank you very much.
You come to Telangana and investigate. Ask the police.
Okay, we will do that.
Why these cases have not been solved as yet when they're on video, people have killed themselves.
Okay, let's leave it there. Renuka Chaudhary, as always, making the headlines. Appreciate your joining me here on the News Today. Let's take a break. On the other side, our Good News Today story. There's always some good news in this wonderful country.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999892171.
You are watching India Today.
Welcome back. Let's turn to our Good News Today story. It's about a dog lover. Meet today Vibha, a Noida resident who feeds stray dogs in her locality on a daily basis. Her love for dogs has now made her start a business venture around it as well. It's a heartwarming story for anyone who's a dog lover. Take a look.
Visitors to Vibha Chug's office receive a welcome by Laddu, Barfi and Mohini. all dogs who she adopted from the streets. But why are dogs in the office?
कोरोना काल में जब रात को सड़क पे भूखे डॉग्स रोते थे तो मुझे नींद नहीं आती थी। तब एहसास हुआ जाकर कि इन स्ट्रे डॉग्स को कौन पालता है। जो ये मेरा क्वेश्चन मन में घूमता था तो उसका आंसर मिला कि इन्हें तो पालता था वो गली पे समोसे वाला, मोमो वाला, अंडे वाला, रेडी पर चाय लगाने वाला, क्योंकि वही कभी ब्रेड बिस्किट वहीं पे लोग जब खाने के लिए खड़े होते थे तो वो लोग डाल देते थे इन्हें। अचानक से सब लोग गांव चले गए, सरकार ने इनके बारे में कुछ सोचा नहीं। अब ये भूखे बेचारे बच्चे किसे बताएं इनकी पीड़ा क्या थी।
Vibha used to work in an MNC but was unemployed during the lockdown when she started to feed the street dogs. When monthly expenses crossed 40,000 rupees, she got down to business. Vibha gathered women in the neighborhood who had also lost their jobs and started to stitch clothings for not just people but also dogs.
मैंने इन्हें नीचे जाकर अपनी सोसाइटी के चारों तरफ 10-15 कुत्ते थे, 10-15 डॉग्स थे, मैंने उन्हें खाना खिलाना शुरू किया। हमारे बनाए हुए जो डॉग्स के स्वेटर हैं वो देश विदेश में जाते हैं। ये डॉग स्वेटर हाथ से बुनने का आइडिया बड़ा यूनिक है। आपको पता है आज हम भारत की इकलौती ऐसी कंपनी हैं जो हाथ से बुने हुए स्वेटर इन डॉग्स के लिए बाजार में बनाकर बेचती है।
From being boycotted by families in the apartment complex to being feted by them, Vibha has indeed come a long way.
हैप्पी है, हम उसे बहुत प्यार करते हैं। पहले बहुत डर लगता था, अब तो हमसे भी अच्छा खाना खाता है। कभी चॉकलेट वाले बिस्कुट मांगता, कभी पनीर। और मैं सोचती हूँ कि सारा इसे खिला दोगे और अपने लिए नहीं लाते, उसके लिए लाएंगे।
Dogs, they say, are our best friends, and Vibha has proven to be a good friend to the dogs as well. Bureau Report, India Today.
क्योंकि तुम मुझे प्यार करते हो।
Let's leave you with our image of the day. It's from Tamil Nadu, where a video of a policeman has gone viral. The man in khaki can be seen sweeping the road with a broom at a red light. The video was shared by an IAS officer, Avnish Sharan, and it shows that our police, as always, are ready to do anything when asked to do it, or sometimes on their own volition. We leave you with that image. It shows, in a way, the dedication of the men in khaki to their work and to keeping Chennai clean. Bye for now. Stay well, stay safe. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. India's #1 political reporter.
Defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye. Unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% pure prime time. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching India.
Everyone's busy finding what's trending. You're busy finding out why. India Today, for those who research before reacting. Download the India Today app now. Make your media plan smarter with India Today live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today live TV on your connected devices. Everyone's busy finding what's trending. You're busy finding out why. India Today, for those who research before reacting. Download the India Today app now. Make your media plan smarter with India Today live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching
Presented by Berger Easy Clean. No dag, no dhabba, only beautiful walls.